green light?
No, there's a green light on the front that's supposed to let. Oh, I just heard something.
Yeah, we got it green now.
Oh, there it is. Now it's on yet.
Okay.
Jen, I think we got to replace the batteries here because that just turned green.
Here we go.
It's coming to light.
Now it's coming up.
Sorry.
Yep, it's working now. It's working now. Hang on, I'm just going to try to get the presentation up. Brian, can you get the presentation back on there?
I have both of them right here. The two.
Yeah, I'm listening, Jen.
Peter, are we putting yours on the screen? I have it right here.
Not mine.
Yep.
I have it right here.
No, you have to put mine.
All right, move the mouse to the right. I'm trying to get a second screen. All right, hold it right there. Okay, so I get it up there. Projector's on, and I'm trying to. When I get up to the network, I got DVI and I got
Computer 1.
computer 1, computer 2.
S video.
Nope. Okay, hold up. Just hold it there. Is it going to come on automatically?
I'm not doing anything.
Gas login?
I miss the old days of the projector. Well, the slides.
Brian, are you logged in?
No, it was locked. It was up when I got there.
You can even write on them.
No.
Man, aren't you supposed to be in the middle chair?
I just go where my name is. Not today. Not today. No, you don't want me in the middle.
Yeah, and it looks nice, yeah.
I know.
Now you have a template you can use for the rest of your life.
That's right. You got a very nice print. Who printed these, Peter?
You know, these are Oregon's colors, you know, yellow or green. Ducks, Oregon ducks.
We don't want thin film presentation.
No, I have them down. They're open right here.
All right, pull it up, Brian. Hang on. Click on that. All right, so Jen, I still have not been able to get to the split screen yet. I took used to the split screen. You know what I mean? The two screens.
Do I have to hit function F4?
No, nothing's on the projector other than what I told you. You know, yeah, on the computer I got Brian's first page of the presentation right now. Yeah, on the computer, but I'm trying to get it to read on this.
Well, can I?
All right, here, Brian's going to talk to you.
Do we have to like function F and something to do this? Okay, hold on. I'll put my presentation down. Yep, right click on the desktop. Okay. Yep, okay. Adjust resolution, calibrate color, change display settings. Okay. Mobile PC only. Multiple displays show only on one. Duplicate these displays or extend these displays. Yeah, it's on a. Yes. Yes. So is that duplicate these displays? Extend these displays. Okay, so click that, and then you must select that. That's fine. Okay. All right. Now let's see. Oh, here we go. Now we got something happening.
There you go.
Is that it?
Hey, we're pretty close to it.
All right.
It does. It's kind of small. It's not full screen, but that's okay, I guess.
Actually, before I forget, I was going to call you anyway. Next Tuesday, the 3rd.
So how do I get
put on the agenda?
Oh, there we go.
for the
Okay,
fire
hold on.
station to
Yep, hold on.
discuss and maybe take a motion. Yeah, find it. The 3rd. I'll send you an email. I will. I haven't done it yet. I'll send you an email. Yeah, but that
Well, I
week from
just
tomorrow.
dragged it over and then fully expanded it.
So I can
That
come
should
and
be
answer
fine.
any questions if there is any?
There will be. I'm sure. Yes. I think you should be there.
What is F5? F5
No matter what.
locks it.
I think so too.
Just your present might be good for a vote or
is
two.
that F4?
No, that sounds good.
No, yeah, I think.
You'll send me an
Is
email.
it function
Yeah.
F5 or
Right
just
now.
not?
The other thing is there will be an executive session because
No, it's
but not about
It's
the
just-
fire
it's
station.
Not a PowerPoint because it's
For the
it's
school,
a PDF.
about some
So
potential real estate acquisition. So
They'll just have to. They'll
I
have
don't know
to
when that'll
slowly
be,
be
before or
arrowed.
after. I'm not sure.
And I might do it right from here anyway.
But yeah, I'll jot you an email right now. I meant,
Okay,
to, meant to do
perfect.
it today. I didn't do it.
Thank you
Or
very
call you.
much.
Actually, I was going to give you a call.
Okay.
All right, bye.
presentation.
Alan?
Are we gonna?
No, I'm not busy. I'm just sitting here. Don't look at me. I've got nothing. I won't have nothing for a week or two.
That's okay.
Because I don't want to have to.
Or if you want, one of us can sit here and push the forward button.
You know, it's not a PowerPoint line, so you got to push the down arrow, so it might be easier for me to do it.
Okay, we'll get you.
That's fine. Well, so we got to put Phil.
Yeah,
Hold on. We're doing Phil's first, right?
Yeah.
Let me check the agenda.
It never fails, something always goes wrong.
Sorry, you got it.
Well, since I don't have a PowerPoint,
Where
I'll
is
go
it on
first.
here?
Might take about 2
It will
minutes.
be
This?
Stanboy, yeah, that's it.
All right, so then we have to do this.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I don't know. Hold on. I've used this for a million years. There we go.
Want to make your pitch first. We'll have you sitting over here, Alan, and then I guess if he's going to start the. Where are you going to sit?
Can you, Matt? Can you give me my stuff,
I'll
please?
be the moderator over here.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have
Unless you
to
wanna
either that or
the other way.
Peter's gonna have to do this from.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is
And then you go to the question. Yeah, I get you. Right.
Is that everything?
Peter, you're gonna keep me over here, and then somebody.
Yeah, just talk into the mic over there, and you can handle the whole thing.
Okay.
Don't lose that.
Here, lean on.
Okay, I'll just do a brief introduction, then I'll head out to the back. Good afternoon and welcome to the Nantucket Civic League's Forum. We do these forums in order to educate the public about issues that are coming up, that will be coming up at our annual town meeting. The January forum that we did was on the new fire station and the new elementary school. We chose these two major capital programs, or two capital items, because we felt that they were really overriding issues that will impact the community over the long term. Today's forum will deal with how the town is planning to finance these two major capital projects. And we'll hear from our finance director, and we'll hear from Matt Mulcahy, the head of the Finance Committee, and also from Phil Stambaugh, who chaired the Capital Programs Committee. And as I say, today's focus will be on how these major capital projects will be financed. I would remind you that after the vote at town meeting, there will be a ballot question, and both of these articles need to get at first a 2/3 vote at town meeting, and then at the ballot a week later, they need a majority vote at the ballot box. So very, very important issues. These forums will be broadcast on NCTV 18, and they will also appear on the NCTV 18 website. The advantage of the website, of course, is that you can go to the program, you can fast forward or back and forth, so you can get to the good parts, to the parts that you really want to hear and to focus on. This audience will have an opportunity to ask questions of the speakers, and we'll take, of course, any questions. We'll ask you to write the questions out, and we'll provide them to the moderator. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Peter Morrison, Vice President of the Nantucket Civic League, who will moderate today's program. Peter?
Thank you, Alan. Just a bit of background on the Civic League. As you may or may not know, we are representative of 22 neighborhood area associations and over 1,900 dues-paying members, families. And today's program is designed to inform you and also, we hope, a much larger viewing audience who will be seeing rebroadcasts of this on Channel 18 and will also be able to access it, all of us, video on demand on the town website. This second forum, as you know, focuses on how the town plans to finance the new fire station and the new school, and for each topic, the presenters listed on the program are going to offer their perspectives, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you in the audience to address your written questions, which we will then direct to one or another person on the panel. We would like you to submit your questions in writing. If you want to offer a question, just raise your hand, and someone will come by with a card that you can write it on, and will deliver the question to me, the moderator. We do have one last-minute change in today's program. Unfortunately, Bruce Miller cannot be here today. He slipped and fell and is dealing with a cracked rib. And so we wish you well, Bruce. We hope by the time you see this on TV, you will be feeling better. Our first speaker is Phil Stambaugh, to my right, who is chair of the town's capital program committee, and he is going to present the perspective of the committee. And I think you can have a little more than the time allotted if you need to, because we have an open slot, okay?
Terrific. We talk about banking.
Right.
As Peter said, I'm Phil Stambaugh. I'm the current chairman of the Capital Program Committee. I've been the chairman the last 2 years, and this is my 5th year on the Capital Program Committee. I'm not sure everybody knows what the Capital Program Committee is. We've got the members listed on the last page of the handout, which I hope each of you have. But the Capital Programs Committee, every year we have presented to us by the department heads, the town administration, any capital item that they wish to request be approved of $50,000, basically $50,000 or more. So we don't see everything, but we see the bigger items. Each year that I've been on the committee, it's been relatively straightforward. Maintenance, the roads, equipment, vehicles, repairs, et cetera, et cetera. But this year we've got 2 major items that are going to require 2/3 majority vote at the town meeting, as well as the voters of the following week. And those 2 are the new fire station and the new elementary school. The capital. So I'm going to tell you what we did as the Capital Program Committee. Capital Program Committee thoroughly analyzed and evaluated the inputs from the town, finance department, its outside financial advisor, Southwest, as well as the fire chief, his presentations, and the superintendent of schools, Michael Kozart, and the citizens building committees for each of those 2 projects, the school and the fire station. We went back and forth with a lot of questions. They got back to us a lot of answers. There were changes along the way, but we've got to the point where this is ready to go. As a result, the Capital Program Committee, all 7 of us, voted positively to go forward to make these recommendations at town meeting. What was our reasoning? Well, number 1, the school and the fire station, we felt, are immediate needs. The session last time for the Civic League talked about that, but there's also a couple of really good letters in the Thursday, February 12th issue of the Inky Mirror, one for the fire station and one for the school, and I suggest you get a hold of those because I think they're excellent. The other thing that's important is they're project ready. These 2 committees have been meeting for months to discuss this. They've been asked questions, they've had forums, so they've gotten down into the detail of where these are going to be, what the functional layout are going to be. Citizens, just like ourselves, have been on these committees working very hard for the town and for us to make the best recommendation possible to serve our needs. The other thing to recognize, we recognize, is that further postponement would only increase the costs. We know from the fire station example that we didn't vote that in a few years ago, and now it's going to cost a lot more. I think it was about $11 million last time, and now it's $15 million or so. So postponing is just going to cost. We feel that both of these are inevitable, and so the time is now to get these approved. The impacts on the tax rate. Brian's going to go into detail about the impact on the tax rate because everybody's concerned about that. They sound huge, 47 million and 15 million, and they are. But when you do a lot of things in the finance world, you can stretch those out and minimize. I've put muted here. Muted means that it's going to impact, but it's not going to be gigantically impacting the tax rate. As I'm a taxpayer and thinking everybody here is a taxpayer, so I'm concerned about that. So that I think you'll see that the impact on the tax rate is pretty small, but the improvement for the town and its infrastructure is very significant. A new elementary school, a new fire station will serve us very, very well into the future. The other thing that the Capital Programs Committee does is to make sure we're following our own guidelines. There is a self-imposed guideline at the town that the capital spending will not exceed 12% of the operating budget. And Brian will show you a chart that shows that. As a matter of fact, I think I've got that chart as well. On the next page, I stole one of Brian's charts. The interest payments on the debt service for what we're borrowing and what we have borrowed will stay below the 12% guideline out through 2024. So that's important for us to make sure our bond, for our bond rating, that we continue to maintain a high bond rating. We're AA2, which is a very strong bond rating. So we want to maintain that. We maintain that partially because we're fiscally responsible and have been in the past. So the last chart I've got is why will the tax impact be muted? Number one, I just mentioned it, the strong bond rating. I don't know if Brian's going to get into it, but he just recently refinanced some debt, and we got a very, very attractive rate, which is kind of a good indicator of what rates we might get going forward with these two projects. Someone kidded me about this next line, and it does sound kind of bankerish, doesn't it? Did I hedge enough on that one? Rates are unlikely to decline further, but could well rise in the future. So if you can, what I'm trying to say is they're pretty low. They've been lower. They're starting to rise. There's a lot of debate at the Federal Reserve as to whether they should raise their rates, and every time they kind of back away and don't. So, but the direction of rates is not down. Let's put it that way. The other thing is that it's a particularly good time to be doing this investing. Interest payments on prior debt is declining because things are being paid off. And as a matter of fact, when this debt service will hit the taxpayers in 2019 is about the time when it really drops significantly. So from a consistency of what your tax bill is going to be from quarter to quarter, year to year, you're not going to see much of an increase because other things are happening to alleviate that situation. So the timing couldn't be better. So that's kind of what I had to say. It's very straightforward. I tried to make it more complicated, but it's pretty straightforward. Once you decide you need it, we can borrow. It won't impact the tax rate that significantly. We can handle it, and we need it. So, everything's kind of come together in our opinion. So I just wanted to mention who the Capital Program Committee members are. Peter Morrison is on the committee. Peter McEachern, who's the general manager at the Nantucket Yacht Club. Richard Hussey, who's retired but was formerly with GE and NBC Sports, so he's got really a great background. John Tiffany, who is the Finance Committee representative, Nat Lowell, who's the Planning Committee representative, and Tobias Glidden, who's the Board of Selectmen representative. So it's a pretty good group. So I guess we'll hold questions for the end.
Right. Thank you, Phil. We're next going to move on to Brian Turbott's presentation. Brian is the town's Director of Municipal Finance. And let me remind you, after Brian's presentation, I'm sure some of you will have some questions you want to write down, bring them up here so I can assemble them and we can have the panel address them. Brian?
Thank you, Peter. So what I'm going to go through is essentially where we're starting from and what we estimate the potential impact of the two projects to be. And we do have some slides that break them out on an independent basis, being what the estimated impact is for the fire station and then what the estimated impact for the school is as well. So on the first slide that we have here on the screen, it essentially is showing you where we are in debt service. It starts at 2014 and it goes all the way through to 2049. And what we'll see here, as Phil and Peter both have mentioned, is that in 2019 we have a significant drop due to a large portion of debt falling off that is then expended and expired. So we feel that more than likely is the best time to add this debt to the rolls. And I'm going to, as we go through this, I'll explain how we'll be able to do that. The next slide in the handout shows you what the estimated impact of both projects in debt service would be, and it's just a little over $4 million annually. The third slide that we have put together shows what the impact would be with all the other existing debt service that continues after the large decrease in 2018. So you can see we get to just a little over $8 million in projected debt service, and then it slowly starts to decline through, in this presentation here, we have through 2024, excuse me. And we have a blank slide. I don't know how that happened. We have
number 4.
We have a little technical difficulty here.
They have a handout.
Yeah, does everybody have a handout? It might be easier to just follow along.
Yeah, it's there are some more of the handouts. They look like these, and it'd probably be better if you get a copy and share them.
Hold on.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, good job.
Okay, so slide 4, or page 4 here, shows projected debt service for the town all the way out through 2049. Just kind of showing what we have currently outstanding and where the significant drop-off periods are as we progress through. The fifth slide shows the actual valuation based as compared to the projected budget for the following years through 2024. So you can see that debt service is remaining relatively stable underneath the $10 million mark there. And this is the slide that Phil stole from me to show that we are underneath the 12% limit. Getting a little bit higher in 2019, but then having the steady decrease that we would be looking for as other debt falls off. So I think this is probably the part that most everybody in attendance is most interested in, which is the first of about 5 more slides showing the projected impact per to the tax rate. What this slide shows is the projected impact per $100,000 of assessed value. It is a graph that shows both projects as what we project the impacts to be starting in 2019. And I will just read it for the people for the viewing audience. For the residential, we estimate that the impact per $100,000 of assessed value in the first year that the bonds are permanently borrowed to be $5.64, and we estimate the school project to be $16.13 per $100,000 of assessed value. The first 5 years of the project, we estimate it to be essentially flat based on the way that we're doing the borrowing, so we don't anticipate a large change in those first 5 years. This slide here shows the impact for existing and projected debt service to the tax rate. So you can see in fiscal 2018, we project that the tax rate will be somewhere around in the neighborhood, and another slide will show this as well, about $553. And in 2019, when these projects would be, we estimate the projects would be added, it's just a little over $700. And this is, the two valuations, the blue is on a home, an average single-family home of $1.684 million. The red is the impact on the average single-family home for a year-round resident of $1,092,000. So we have done it in two different calculations here. This slide shows the specific impact of the two projects to those same exact home valuations. So we estimate that for a single-family home, average single-family home valued at $1.68 million, it would add approximately $350 onto the tax bill. And for a year-round average, the average residential value is $1,092,000. We estimate that would be approximately $227. So this slide here shows essentially the impact, and again, and this slide here shows the value for the $1.6 million home. As you can see, in 2019, the green is the additional for the two projects. The purple is what we estimate what the current debt service would be. It's important to note that the difference is, which I have calculated already. So the difference here is actually approximately $168 between the $712 in 2019 versus the debt service that would be paid for already authorized projects of $544.85. So the actual net change to your bill would be approximately $168. The next slide shows as we've presented it, for the estimated tax impact on the $1,092,000, which is the average value for the year-round resident. And again, we show in 2019, the current already approved debt would be approximately $235.19. When these projects are approved and added, then we would be looking at an estimated $227 additional money required to support the debt. When you take the difference between what would be paid in 2018 from what we estimate the total to be in 2019, it's $109.43. So those are actually all the slides, but one thing I wanted to talk about is the way that we can manage to push all of the, excuse me, the way that we can move the debt to the years where we believe it's most favorable is because in the short term we do what's known as bond anticipation notes, which we borrow the money as the project rolls forward so that we can finance it and pay for costs, but we have a period of up to 5 years where we can pay on that using what's known as an interest-only option. We chose to move this out to 2019 because it seemed in discussion with the financial advisors to make the most sense. It doesn't necessarily mean if rates, even though our friend Phil, the banker, said that he doesn't envision rates falling, should rates go in the opposite direction of what everybody thinks they're going to do, then we could potentially borrow it earlier, but I don't anticipate that we would be doing it earlier. One important note, too, is because we're pushing this or estimating so far out, we've used an interest rate which I don't believe we would ever actually pay of approximately a little over 5% based on the advice of our financial consultants. I do want to make one slight correction to something that was said previously. Our bond rating actually is AA1, which is one step below AAA, which does afford us slightly lower interest rates. Should we make it to AAA, we would more than likely get lower interest rates, but we certainly have seen favorable responses to our offerings that we just did, so I expect that to continue. That's all I have, Peter.
Okay. Any questions? Write them down, bring them up here, have them brought up. We're going to turn now to Matt Mulcahy, who's the chair of the town's finance committee, for an update on where the FinCom stands.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for inviting me here. I'd like to start out by saying this is the first time I've seen this information in detail, and I'd like to describe it as outstanding. Been on the finance committee for a number of years, and this is the first time that before a project has gone to town meeting for a vote, or big project, is that we've seen the detail of what the effect would be on us as the taxpayers. And it's a question that the finance committee has asked and has never been fully satisfied. So I really want to tip my hat to you, Brian, and to you, Phil, for the impetus on the long-term planning, because it makes the job of the finance committee that much easier.
Great, good to hear.
So to start with that. Basically, with the Finance Committee is that I really have no news to report to you today, and the reason why is that we have not taken up a motion, yay or nay, on either of these projects. So what I would like to do is, and I just really don't want to be redundant by talking about either any of the topics that Phil or Brian has talked about, but just to give you a Finance Committee macro view on capital. The last major project that was approved was this facility here back in 2009. And as you may remember, that took more than one try to get through. And the way any capital project goes through, it starts with the Capital Program Committee, and they recommend to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Selectmen on projects that they feel are important and prioritize. It is then up to the Finance Committee to make a recommendation for town meeting. And the warrant that you may or may not received has 111 items on there, including anything from financial to the zoning. And the Finance Committee does take a motion on each one of those. With the exception of zoning, we just usually follow along with what the planning board does. So when it comes to capital projects, or financial projects, that is where we spend most of our time to analyze. The committee is a 9-member committee appointed by the selectmen for three-year terms, and we are presently in the process of approving and crafting motions for town meeting that is coming up. And we have about 2 weeks left. So where we are on these two articles is that we've just had preliminary discussions, and we will be proceeding actually a week from tomorrow, getting into the nitty-gritty. And again, going back to what I said earlier, the information that we receive will certainly help us go through. Now, the process specifically, there'll be a motion with an appropriation for each one of these projects. The fire station, I believe, will be an appropriation request of $15.1 million, and it'll be crafted in language that will be approved or not approved. It goes to the warrant, and then if approved, if it goes to town meeting, and if no one brings up the question, it'll go immediately to the ballot box for approval in the election in the second Tuesday in April. The school, likewise, will be an appropriation. There is a number that is out there that's $44.8 million. That may or may not change. There are some last-minute discussions that may go on, but it'll hopefully be done by then. And the finance committee, again, will recommend or not recommend, and it'll be in your warrant to see. And then it goes to town meeting, and then the discussion will proceed on the floor, and people will talk in favor or against. My position will be to justify how the finance committee makes its recommendations, yea or nay. And then after that, the consensus will be reached at town meeting, and it'll go to the ballot. So, so again, for right now, for our purposes, we're absorbing all this information in, and we'll be coming up with recommendations and going from there. So I think that's pretty much updating where we are. Thank you.
I've got two questions here, and I'm going to proceed the first one. They're both for Brian, and I'm going to proceed the first one by asking a question of my own, which is, when you were talking about the rate that we now have, that's a rating that we get from agencies that rate us.
That's
And
correct.
I think I understood you to say at one point that if you looked at the way the market behaved, it was sending a slightly stronger signal, which is to say it was acting as though if it didn't think that was the rating, it at least thought that we were at the high end of the group within that rating. Is that correct?
Well, the most recent refunding that we did, the rate of AA1 was on a curve, and the financial advisors did do an analysis for us, and the interest offerings that we got for that particular refunding were certainly tracked a little closer or slightly closer to the AAA status versus the AA1. I wouldn't want to speculate that that's always going to be the case depending on the market, but the most recent one we did certainly returned very favorable rates.
Okay, the question here from the audience is what is needed to get from AA1 to AAA? I don't know if you can answer that easily or not.
That really is not an extremely easy question to answer because every rating company out there has certain functions, other things that they like to see. So, and they're probably more of trade secrets than anything on exactly how they classify everything. So I'm not. I'm hesitant to say we need exactly this to get there because I'm not really sure exactly what this would be at that point right now. We are working to certainly make sure that everything is in order and in a good presentation format to hopefully get to AAA.
Okay. The next question is, what are the expired debts that were mentioned? That's the first part of a two-part question. Either Phil or Brian, can you give us some idea of what those
Sure.
are?
I can't give you exactly what all of the $2 million is made up of because the largest piece, other than obviously small changes via interest for principal being paid off, but the largest piece of approximately $1.9 million was the aggregate from a refunding that was done in 2005. And typically what happens when we do a refunding is we take large pieces of debt and that become callable at a certain time, and we go out and we borrow the money to pay those all off, and then that becomes the new note. So what was exclusively or what was in that refunding that was done in 2005, I don't have a complete listing. I have a debt schedule that shows that that refunding is coming off. I can certainly try to go through and figure out exactly what it was and get back to you on that.
But would it be fair to say it's just kind of the ordinary things that you have to replace as time passes?
It would be fair to say whatever it was previously authorized borrowings that were all rolled out as one, and then this was an opportunity to refund it at a lower interest rate, so it was aggregated together.
Okay.
What was the lower interest rate?
On that one right there, in 2005, I don't remember off the top of my head. The one that we recently did, which remains for is a period of 10 years, was between 2% and 3%. So, and
that's kind of my point. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. The second part of this question is, if the 5% interest rate is much higher than the town should expect, can we safely assume these cost projections are higher than they actually will be?
We could reasonably assume if the interest rate rises significantly that these costs would change. Yes, that would be true. In consultation with our bond advisors, at between 5 and 5.5%, they don't envision that they're going to get there. Quite frankly, they did that as in consultation with them, did that as a hedge to kind of protect ourselves against getting them too low. Obviously, if they did go up, then yes, these costs would change.
So another way to think about it is we've adopted a conservative assumption, and a betting man would say the odds are better than 50-50 that whatever surprise we see will be a good one, not a bad one. Is that a way of thinking about it?
We have adopted a conservative approach.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
We don't bet in town government.
We don't bet. Okay.
No.
All right. Now, the next question is, does the tax rate calculation presume the current 20% exemption afforded for year-round residents?
No, it does not. It is strictly which in this slide here, excuse me, for the average year-round assessed value of $1,092,092 does not take into account the residential exemption.
Okay, so that means that if you have a residential exemption, this is slightly overestimating what you'd pay, if I got that right?
That is. This means that if you do qualify for that, then obviously your situation will be a little bit different.
Is it the case that the 20% exemption may increase to 30%? I don't know if anybody can answer that.
I would not be the one to answer that question.
That's in the hands of the Board of Selectmen.
All right. Contact your selectman about that. I don't have any other questions. I would urge you to get a copy of the fact sheet, because in the fact sheet there are a number of other points that I think you should understand, and I'm talking about you and the television audience as well as here, including what I've put in here, a point that allows you to do a simple calculation that will give you an approximate estimate of what the tax impact will be on your own home if you know what the assessed value is. And all you need to do is call your adolescent child to the TV set and tell him to follow the instructions on the fact sheet. You might even be able to do it yourself. It's a simple multiply this by this and you come up with what the estimate is. And I hope that this will introduce objectivity into the debate at annual town meetings so that everybody understands exactly what the tax impact will be. And the only other point that I would make, and I'm sort of stalling here for more questions from the audience, since you haven't provided any, I'll take the prerogative of...
Could I say
Sure.
something to stall further?
All right.
One of the things that calculation would do would be, say, to take those two items standalone, okay? And what those last two charts did was incorporated into what the tax rate, other factors beyond just those
Right.
two things. So that calculation won't tell you how much your taxes are going to go up, because there's other factors like the debt service running off. So you can see that it doesn't really, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But that would give you that particular thing. What is the impact, or what is the portion of my tax rate that will be for these two projects? That is what that will give you. But what your tax rate will be is a different thing.
Right. It almost addresses the question, if I just decided I don't think we should be spending all that money, how much would I be paying anyhow in my tax rate? And the answer is, it would be what you see here minus the amount that we've allocated for the school and the fire station. One point that I would like to make, because I think about this in terms of kind of larger policy issues, when you ask the question, who is it that's going to end up paying for these two major investments in our future, the answer is that we are joining today's taxpayers and future taxpayers, all of whom are going to benefit from a larger school and a larger fire station, together in shouldering the costs of investing in the future. And I think that's an important perspective to have. This is not just that there's a generation who's going to be stuck with a lot of money that they're paying over 10 years, and then they will have paid for it. The people who are paying for this are the people who are going to benefit from it, today's taxpayers and tomorrow's taxpayers. Now, do I have any other questions? We'd like to have it so that we can hear it on the microphone, so I guess it'd be better if you write it down and just give it to Alan. He can bring it up here.
Or come to the mic.
Meanwhile, any other questions you have?
Well, the other thing is, we're benefiting from prior taxpayers and what they did for us in terms of the infrastructure of the island. And you can't get away with not investing in the infrastructure of the island. We need to do that. And so if you can do it in an orderly, logical, tax-effective way, then it's kind of like you have to do it. You just can't let things run down. Just like your house, you can't let it not reinvest in your house because it'll run down, and then it's going to really cost you down the road.
Someone has the following question. Why were these investments postponed in prior fiscal years? I don't know if there's anybody here who can answer that.
Well, I can take a crack. With the school, it's not that anything has been postponed. It's that the administration with the school has been working diligently for the past 2 years to come up with this plan, so that when it came forward, it would be thorough, all the options explored and exhaustively explored, so that it's a ready project to go. The school, and this is maybe off on a little tangent, but hopefully not, there is a state program that helps fund for schools, and that Nantucket was in on the, did apply for but did not make it. That helped delay it over a number of years, but the chances of Nantucket getting that approval were slim. As for the fire station, I think that, and I'm going back history, I think we all know, is that the original plan in 2008 was that this facility was going to be a joint facility between police and fire for an appropriation of $27 million. That failed at the ballot box, and the powers that be decided to split it up and build this facility first for $15 million, with the idea for the fire station to come online sometime after. Well, that sometime after is now. So I think that's a general answer to that. And
one of the things that Matt said before was, because I remember the fire station and the and the police station debate and what was going on at town meeting. I don't know that we had all the facts that we have now. I don't think anybody presented to me at that town meeting what the impact was going to be.
Not
and
like
it was
this.
just a gigantic number, and people got all caught up with that gigantic number as opposed to what the real effect was going to be. And I think we've made great strides, Finance Committee and the Capital Program Committee and the Board of Selectmen, in trying to be more orderly, get more information, so that when we get to the point where we're ready to go, you as a rational, intelligent person can say, yeah, I agree with them. They've answered all my questions. I'd like to move forward with that. And I'm hoping that's the case here, because the Capital Program Committee keeps getting presented $300,000 items for new trailers to handle the kids. And it's a waste of money, to be honest. We can't do anything with them after they're used. And so to keep adding trailers, double wides, if you will, is not good. It's not good from a finance point of view, but it's certainly not good from a kid and the education point of view. So anyway, I think we have a lot more facts to make decisions on this time.
Absolutely.
I think it's also fair to say that if you look at it historically, we went into a very, very steep recession where we really had to tighten our belt in ways that made us behave in the short run in order to have enough oxygen, so to speak.
That's a very good point.
And now we have to start thinking more strategically about what it is we should be doing in the long run. Question for Brian. How long will it take for this debt to be paid off?
In the presentation, we've assumed a 20-year term.
Okay. If you could turn to page 4, somebody in the audience was asking the question, what is causing the 2025 debt service spike in the graph on page 4?
So the 2025 spike in debt service is a result of the first 5 years of the debt service are actually created or determined to be based on and I have to look at my notes here, a level debt service, so that the payment between interest and principal is the same, is level for the first 5 years. And then after that, for the remaining 15 years, we actually go to a equal principal payment, excuse me. So that would be what's causing this. Now, keep in mind, this is just one method that we can use. We can kind of mold those assumptions to change into what seems to be I won't say better idea, but a different idea as a way to smooth this out. This is the way that we originally had discussed it with the financial advisors. We certainly can model this in multiple different ways to fix that, to change that as well.
So if I understand you correctly, if I look at that bump up and then it goes down, you could think of it almost as kind of going like that, squishing it a little so it's a little less of a sharp rise and a steep decline, that this is just a going forward what we're planning on now, but we could easily adjust it.
Going forward, this is how we're planning to do it right now, but we could certainly adjust this as we get closer to fiscal 19 when it's permanently borrowed.
Right, because this is something that we learned on the Capital Programs Committee, that I guess the process of smoothing is something where you have all sorts of options to say we want to tinker with it a little bit so we're paying the same amount of money but just not all at once in 1 year. We want to have it more or less evened out over several years, and that is quite a bit in the future right now. We don't know what interest rates will be, et cetera.
Correct.
The next question is, why would you not show the tax rate with the 20% exemption, I think that's residence exemption included? Aren't all year-round residents eligible for the exemption? I think you can answer that, Brian.
Historically, we have not shown it in any of the presentations that I've done since I've been here. So for consistency's sake, that's the way that we chose to present this. And I would actually have to truthfully defer to the assessor on the exact qualifications and for the residential exemption. I'm not an expert on it.
The next question is, are there any guarantees preventing large cost overruns? What if they do occur? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Okay, well, I'll try to answer that and interrupt. Going back to earlier part of my presentation is that there'll be an appropriation, a number that will get approved, and assuming it goes forward, so let's say the school is $44.8 million. That authorizes the town to borrow debt exclusion up to that amount. So if the project comes in at $46 million, then before anything proceeds, it's a cutoff at the 44.8, would need to come back to town meeting, back to this process to get approved. So if there is a cost overrun.
I know that there's more of an answer to that, but I don't think there's anybody at the table who can give it. I'm sure that this is an issue that has been thought of, and there are guarantees, or at least contingencies.
Well, how about this? Maybe another way of answering it, too, is that, talking about the school and the fire, is that they've been researched exhaustively so that the idea of an overrun will be minimized and less likely. And I'm looking at Mark and shaking your head. Is that a fair way to say it? And the school also, again, that taking 2 years to do this is the idea that there will not be. I think also there's always a contingency built on in. Remember, the appropriation is up to. It doesn't mean that it's going to be at the limit. And so, like, I think, for example, the police station didn't get to the exact limit. And so it's only an authorization up to an amount.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency for us to think of, the Boston Big Dig or the bullet train things where they say, well, we all know that they cost it out at $50 million and it ends up costing $500 million.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And no project ever comes in at what it is. I don't have the impression that the margin of error here is on that sort of a scale.
I don't think so either. And I'll go back to this facility that we're in. Is that, and this, I think it's fair to say that the perception of this facility in the minds of some of the voters is not a positive one. But it did not go over the amount that was appropriated.
Good.
So, if that helps answer it.
Well, we've exhausted all the questions. We're done early, and I thank you all for informative presentation. I thank you, audience, for the questions. They're good. And we hope that our listeners will think carefully about what they've heard and consult the fact sheet, which has been distributed here and will be hopefully made public and available at annual town meetings, so you can think through all the issues and make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. I didn't have to say anything. I just look at
Yeah, I'll email it to you.
What we're talking about.
I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can.
it. Makes my job.
Thanks for fielding those questions. I mean, I guess
Mr. Fire Chief.
For me? I guess